Hey, I'm Dean Blandino. That's Mike Pereira. Another segment of Last Call. Mike is in the airport. You might hear some background noise just coming back from a big NFC championship game in LA. But let's start in the other game, the AFC championship, Bengals and Chiefs. Big play in overtime. Could have been a huge play in overtime. There's no H on that word. Joe Mixon, Mike, did he fumble? Did he give himself up? Andy Reid wanted to challenge. We know in overtime the coaches can't challenge. What happened on this one?
Well, it just looks funny, but the play was officiated correctly. He literally gave himself up. What defines giving yourself up? It's basically says that if you go to the ground and you don't immediately get up and try to advance, then you have given yourself up. And Mixon, what he did, he tripped over a teammate, so he technically wasn't down by contact. But he got up and dropped the ball because he thought he was down by contact. So he gave himself up. He gave up his attempt to advance the ball. And the officials did what they were supposed to do, which is rule him dead. Now, Andy, I mean, he knew that he couldn't challenge it, but I think he wanted to get more information to see if they would look at it with replay, looking at it upstairs. But it's not reviewable. That's one of those issues where whatever the officials rule on the field, if they ruled that it was a fumble, that he did try to advance and then drop the ball, that wouldn't have been reviewable either way. So while it looks funny, but that was properly officiated. But it happened before, Dean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember a play that was controversial with Plexico Burress. And I think when he was with the Steelers and getting up after thinking he was down and spiking the ball. We had a play in a Bills, I think it was the Bills and the Texans playoff game in the end zone where the kick returner caught the ball in the end zone and flipped the ball to the referee. Again, there's judgment involved, but really what it comes down to is common sense, right? And the rule talks about a player going to the ground or falling to the ground and making no immediate attempt to advance. And that's the common sense part of the rule. Look, the play, Mixon thinks he's down, he's getting up. No one is extending the play. He was down, the play was over, and I agree. The officials are gonna kill that. They're not gonna make that a fumble or a backward pass because that's where it gets real complicated. And again, he thought he was down, he gave himself up. No attempt to advance. Now, if he gets up and he runs with it, now it's on him. We'll see, whatever happens, but he gave himself up in that situation. Let's, he wasn't even playing this weekend. And all we're talking about, we got two great games. And this guy, we're talking about him, and he wasn't even playing. I think that's how he likes it. He likes to be the center of attention in a good way. Tom Brady. Is Tom Brady retiring? We're watching AFC Championship, NFC Championship going down to the wire. One game overtime. One game ends on a pick in the last minute. And we're talking about whether Tom is retiring. Yes, he is. No, he isn't. Who's to say? I'm not taking an answer till I hear it from TB12 himself. But Mike, let's talk a little bit about the history of Tom Brady and a play that you and I know very well that many believe started the Patriots dynasty and started Tom's ascension from just a little kid to the GOAT, the tuck play. Mike, where were you when that crazy play happened?
I don't know if he's really retiring. He hasn't announced it yet himself, but I would think with all of the conversation, he probably is. But I think it does go down to the tuck rule play. I mean, and that was my first year as head of officiating. And it's kind of one of those things where you remember exactly where you are. You always will remember where you are. And for me, I was in St. Louis, Dean, and there was a playoff game the next day in St. Louis. And I was watching the game, and to me, it was a beautiful game. A game in the snow, just to me, is absolutely beautiful. And so I had a bottle of wine in my room watching this game, loving the game. I was a good 2/3 of the way through the bottle of wine when that play happened. And to me, when I saw it happen live, I thought, fumble. And then when I saw the first replay, I went, it's the tuck rule. So I knew immediately it was going to be reversed. And Walt Coleman went to the sideline, got the decision from the replay official. It was the correct decision. It was an incomplete pass. But I knew my phone would blow up, and then had to go on television the next day to demonstrate the tuck rule to ESPN on the sideline before the game. So my first playoff season as head of officiating, Tom Brady created, in my mind, the most controversial play that I had throughout my entire career.
For me, it's funny because, and I hate to admit this, I wasn't even watching the game. That was the second year we had replay, and I was an assistant in the league office, as you remember, but I had been, it was my first year as a replay official, so I was on the road all year and going to games and doing things. I wasn't assigned to a playoff game that weekend. And I was actually kind of done with football for a little bit, and I was at the movies, and I'm a big sci-fi geek, and Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring was the first movie that came out, and I was watching Fellowship of the Ring, and my phone started to blow up, and I was like, oh no, what is going on? But I was not leaving that movie. I'd read those books. I was a geek. I was not leaving the movie. I know who I was with. Maybe I should have left the movie, but I was so engrossed in that movie. I was like, whatever happened in the game, it can't be that bad. And then when I got home and I put on SportsCenter, I was like, wow, it's pretty bad. This is crazy. So, but again, that play, a lot of people, I know we work with Charles Woodson, who made the hit on Brady, and he'll tell you that was the start of the Brady and the New England Patriots dynasty. We're done with the championship games, 2 tremendous games. And now we've got the Pro Bowl. Don't forget about the Pro Bowl, but we've got the big one in 2 weeks in LA, the Super Bowl. And just like we know the 2 teams, we know the officiating crew. The NFL announced the officiating crew for the Super Bowl. Mike, how does that process work? And give us some personal feelings about the crew itself.
Well, first of all, you get assigned if you're in the top category. They have 5 categories that they evaluate the officials in and put them into. And categories 1, 2, and 3 end up working in the playoffs. 4 and 5, that's not a good list to be on. And when it comes to the Super Bowl, you've got to be category 1, and you have to have had 5 full years of experience before you can work a Super Bowl. So they're experienced. It's an experienced crew. It always is. Ron Torbert's leading the crew. And for those people that say, well, does Torbert's crew call a lot of penalties? Let's forget about that. Let's try not to analyze that because of the fact this isn't his regular season crew. This is, quote unquote, an all-star crew. It's the best of the best at their positions. I've always been a crew guy. I mean, I tried to advance the crews during my early time into the playoffs, and we did it for about 3 years and then backed off to the all-star thing. But I think the more important thing is, how are they going to officiate the game? And if you look at the playoffs, you can see that the officials almost distance themselves from the game. There's just not a lot of penalties. Even yesterday in our game, in the Rams game and the 49ers, not a lot of penalties called. And clearly there were some missed, but I think it's this whole notion of, I never told them to officiate it differently. You never told them to officiate it any differently. But I think when it gets to this time, the one and done aspect of the season, you just kind of distance yourself. You don't want to be a part of the story. And so far, at least once we got past the wild card round, so far it's been really good. I mean, the football games have been incredible, and the officials have stayed out of their way, which is their goal. But, I think, Ron Torbert will do a good job. This is his first Super Bowl as a referee. I think he'll do an excellent job getting his crew ready to work the game.
Yeah, and you bring up the crew, and I agree, it really felt like the championship games. And again, it's a balance, and there's a fine line, but it did feel like there wasn't going to be a lot of flags thrown. And I know a lot of people think that's great. And it is if it's a clean game, right? It is, but if teams are going to take advantage of that, you just have to be careful. But I thought both games were well officiated. As we look at the Super Bowl crew, we talk about, the crew concept versus an all-star concept, right? These officials from the Super Bowl crew all worked a previous round in the playoffs. They all worked during the divisional round, and they worked together to some extent. Your referee, Ron Torbert, and your umpire, Brian Neal, worked together in the divisional round. They worked the San Francisco-Green Bay game. And then you have line of scrimmage officials and deep wing officials on the same sideline that also work together. So your head line judge and your side judge work together during the divisional round, and your line judge and your field judge. And then your back judge, Scott Helverson, worked the same game, that San Francisco-Green Bay game, with Ron Torbert and Brian Neal. So they worked together a couple of weeks ago. And so that familiarity, and all of these officials, once they're veterans and they've been in the league for a while, they've probably been on a crew with other members of this Super Bowl crew. So it's not like they're coming in cold and they've never worked together and they've never communicated. So, and they have 2 weeks to prepare, and they're going to prepare just like the teams do. Now that we know what two teams are in, this crew will get together and they will start looking at tape. They will look at Rams tape. They will look at Bengals tape. They will go through all of their preparation, looking for tendencies and formations and things like that. And then you also have, I remember, Mike, when we were doing it, we had 3 alternates in the playoffs and then 5 for the Super Bowl. Now it's another crew of 7 officials that are alternates. So if you have an injury, if you have anything that happens, you have qualified officials that are ready to step in. And I think it's going to be a great game and a really great crew that's assigned to the game.
Yeah, and the crew is going to prepare for this big game, prepare for the Bengals and the Rams. And I'm going to prepare too, Dean. I'm going to prepare to try to find the best margarita in the Riviera Maya area. I'm on my way to Mexico. I'm done with football for a week. So I'm going to be on the search, just like that crew. I'm going to prepare. And when I find it, I'll drop you a little note. So if you ever go down there, you'll know where to go.
For the best stories, easy-to-find scores, and comprehensive team pages, plus access to every live Fox Sports game and exclusive bonus cameras, download the all-new Fox Sports app now.